locked the whole time.
Yosy, don't forget my package. Find out where your son-in-law hid it.
Okay, we will live everything. Okay, let's see where we're holding.
Oh, hold on. I have to write the got it that it's live stream.
Okay. So I believe we finished the Mishnah yesterday. So I'm just going to quickly recap the Mishnah. The Mishnah started off telling us, first of all, that you need 3 dayanim that are hadyotais, which the Gemara is, that's the first subject of the Gemara. Then the Mishnah goes into great detail as to what type of shoes are allowed and what type of shoes are not allowed. And that's the video that I forwarded, that I was referring to, that gives you a good understanding of what the shoe looks like. It discusses the construction of the shoe and what could be missing and what not. And we're going to see that the general theme of what type of shoes are allowed are a sandal is the best way to do it. Now there were 2 types of shoes in those days. There was a sandal which consisted of a hard sole, but no top, and there was just straps connected to the hard sole, and those straps wouldn't just tie to your foot like our sandal today. Rather, the straps would wrap around your leg, and it would tie below the knee. So that's the sandal that the Mishnah is referring to, versus a mineral, which is soft leather all around, and it's only the foot. Okay? Now, the main focus is that the shoe should be directly on the foot of the person getting Chalitza, such as
Yosy,
yes.
I don't hear your voice much. I don't know. The microphone, is it on?
Let me ask the other people. Moish, can you hear me?
I hear you. It's a little bit muffled, but I hear you.
Okay. So
yeah, I have the same, a little muffled.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is thank you, David. I'm going to change my microphone to the microphone from the.
You sound okay. It's a little slightly muffled.
Let me.
No, but you sound clearer. Yeah.
Hold on a second. Is this better?
Yeah.
Like I'll ask you at the eye doctor. Better or
No,
worse?
that's better. That's better.
That's better?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm listening through my headphones, but I'm speaking through the microphone of the computer itself.
Yeah, it's better now. More clear.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the focus with this shoe are several focuses. Focus number 1 is it has to be directly on his foot. As a matter of fact, one of the instructions as in the process of Chalitza is the man does not wear a shoe because his foot has to be directly in the shoe with nothing in between his foot and the shoe. And the law is even they actually wash the foot down because even if there's a little dirt, we don't want any Chalitza between the man's foot and the shoe.
So obviously there's no socks.
Correct. There's no socks. That's the first
Rabbi
thing.
Heinemann gave a hesped for Amnat the Greenblatt. And he talked about once he called them up with a shaila that he had a guy they were letting out of prison to do Chalitza. And they were putting one of these GPS things, trackers on his ankle. And how they deal with that.
Interesting, because when I assume that they only have one ankle bracelet. So it must have been on his right foot, because that's where they put the Chalitza shoe.
So that was one of the things that he talked about, and he said that there's a one time or enough that told him that he said, give me 3 hours to answer, and he was so surprised that it took 3 hours. What was it? The first thing that he did was he went to a prison to find out what it looked like and if they can maybe let it. Then he went to a judge because they told him we can't talk about it, you have to speak. So that was. He said at the end of it, he gave him an eitzah, but it turned out the guy came without an ankle bracelet.
That's
Or he
fascinating.
gave him an exit to do Yibum.
Okay, geweldig. Wow. So, we want the shoe to be directly on the foot. We also need it that she should be removing the shoe and it shouldn't come off by itself. So that's why you need all these straps and all these ties so that she should have to remove it. And that really leads to most of the rules about it. And we'll soon see why it is that we like a sandal better than a minnow. The Gemara is going to discuss that as well. But that's where these rules come from. Okay, then the Mishnah tells us that the shoe has to be on the foot. Foot is defined as any place below the knee. Rahman was taught that someone's an amputee, as long as there's some of his leg below the knee that's still there, the chalitza would be good. But Rahman was taught that if the amputation was above the knee, this would not be a possible candidate for chalitza. Then there was discussion of if it fits properly. If it doesn't fit, if you have the left on the right, if you have the left shoe on your right foot, would that be good? The Mishnah is good. So now let's get.
Yes, if somebody doesn't have a foot, can they put it on the other foot, or it has to be on the right foot?
I don't know, but it seems like from the mission that it has to be on the right foot. But once again, foot is not defined as how we define foot. Foot is defined as anything below the knee.
And it makes no difference the guy's a righty, a lefty, or anything. It's the right foot is right foot.
I think so. That's what we're going to be learning over the next couple of days. But I'm just looking at the first Mishnah, where the first Mishnah says, if you put a left-handed foot on this right foot, the chalitza is kosher. So that would be mashma that the main hakpada is that it should be his right foot, not what the shoe is. So I guess we'll see as we go through the Gemara. The first line, first comment that the Gemara is analyzing is this besdin that you need to have. This besdin 3, exactly who are these people? How big chashav dayanim they need to be? Because the Mishnah's hedyotos are enough. So frek the Gemara, umayachar dafilu shloish hedyotos. If the Mishnah says beferish, any 3 people are good enough to use for chalitza, dayanim lomali. So why do we need to get dayanim for? A hedyot should be enough. Zog to Gemara, hakamashmalam diba'inan b'shloisha sheyodim lahakrish ke'endayam. You don't need mamish dayanim, but you can't have amaratzim either. It has to be people who will be able to read. Rashi says he has to be able to read to the Yovim, so there's sort of a live play-by-play being broadcast by the dayanim during the process. And they say lechafati lekachta, like it says in the pasuk, me'ei Yevami lahakrim, and then they say kachi yasalish. They have to be able to say this parsha. They have to be literate, at least. Tanina lo the Tanarabban. We actually have a brayta to support this assertion. Mitzvah chalitza b'shloisha sheyoidin lahakris ke'en dayanim. And our mission is 3, and in fact, the Tanakama, the brayta that we just quoted, says 3 is enough. But Rabbi Yehuda, who's clearly dissenting from the opinion of our Mishnah, holds it has to be 5 dayanim. My time in the Tanakama. What's the svara for 3 dayanim, and what's the svara for 5 dayanim? So let's start with the Tanakama. The Tanya we learned, Zekanim. It says in the pasuk, and let me read the pasuk inside because I have it right over here on the screen. It says in the pasuk. Let me see if I can find it. Where am I? Shulchan Aruch over here. Here we are. It says in the pasuk. So it says Zekanim, and we're going to soon see that the next pasuk says V'karuloi Ziknei Iroi. So let's see what it says. V'karuloi Ziknei V'dibru. So these are the words we're going to be focusing on. Hazakanim, we're going to be focusing on Ziknei, and we're going to be focusing on V'karu and on V'dibru. So Zok the Heilige Gemara. according to the Chachamim, that you need 3 dayanim, because it says she comes to the Zakanim. And what we know, the miyat of plural, the lowest number that could be referred to as kenim in the plural tense is shnayim. Now, ve'ein bezin shakol, we never allow a bezin to be a bezin of 50-50. It can never be an even number. Therefore, my sifan alayim oid echad. So to break the even number, to make it into an odd number, we add another one, and that's where we get the calculation of 3 days. Rabbi Yehuda says, it says ziknei as well. It doesn't just say zikanim, it says ziknei as well in a different passage. So ziknei is 9, zikanim is 9. That's 4. That's where we find the calculation for 5. It says ziknei as well. They don't use it to teach you that you need another 2 dayanim. So what are they using it for? We needed to be marba. How do we know that even 3 adjoitis is enough? I know it from the fact that it's a ziknei. That tells me that it's any ziknei. It doesn't have to be a special ziknei. Adjoitis are enough. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't have that extra ziknei because he uses it to say that we need another 2 dayanim. So hadyotis v'nalei. How will he know that the dayanim don't have to be real dayanim? They just need to be literate. He learns it from the word la'ene, where we learn from there that the person who's on this bezdin, one of these 3 people, or so there are 5 people, have to be able to see. What does that have to do with hadyotis? So we'll see in a minute. The Amar La'ene prat l'sum. From La'ene we know that if these dayanim are blind, they're not able to officiate the Chalitza. But the question is, why would I have a havamina that a blind person can officiate Chalitza, that I should need a pasuk to say not? With the Yitzrich La'ene l'mut esumim, shemami no ta'afilu hadyotis. You have a right that it can't mean a dying, because a dying by definition can't be blind for a different reason. So from the fact that the Torah says that one of these dayanim on the Chalitza panel cannot be blind is a raya that they can't be members of Sanhedrin. Because if they were members of Sanhedrin, then we would know anyway that they can't be blind, because if you're blind, you're disqualified from being a member of Sanhedrin. So for the fact that we need a pasuk to say that the bezin for the Chalitza cannot be blind, proves that he doesn't have to be able to be a member of the Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin ba'ina. If you would think that you need someone who's royal to be on the Sanhedrin, why in the world would I need a pasuk special to tell me that a blind person doesn't qualify? I would know that this person couldn't be blind because of Rabbi Yosef's halacha. Just like Bezdin, each member of Bezdin has to be squeaky clean in his scruples, squeaky honest, so to his guf, his body has to be perfect and complete. So we know anyway, if there was a member of Sanhedrin, that the person wasn't blind. The fact that we know that this person does not necessarily have to be a member of the Sanhedrin. How do you know this halacha that a person who's dying has to be perfect? So to Gemara, we know it from a pasuk in Shir Hashir. There's a pasuk that says in Shir Hashir, Shenemar kulach yafa ra'isi. You're perfect. You're all perfect. Umum einbach, and there's no mum, and this is referring to this. What are the chachamim? What are they going to do with this extra word la'ene that Rabbi Yehuda used to teaches you hadyotis? So tomorrow the chachamim would use it for ahu l'chiderav ahuda. We need that for Rabba's halacha. The Amar Rabba shrichi dayani lemechse ruka bikanofik mipuma the Yevamos. When the Yevamos spits, it has to be a visible spit. They have to actually see the saliva coming out of her mouth, because it says the chsiv la'ene has a kenim v'yarka. She has to spit where it should be la'ene has a kenim. That's why it says la'ene. V'idach. So how will Rabbi Yehuda know that the dayanim have to see the saliva? V'idach nami mibay lechidro. he also needs to teach that Allah. In the Chanami. The Elajoitis we know. So how will we know Elajoitis? Now that we're not using La'ina to tell me Elajoitis. So we're Nafka mi Bi Yisrael. It says Bi Yisrael, which Rashi tells us Lahakam La'acham Shem Bi Yisrael. And that means any Yisrael Kodu, any minimum Yid, simple Yid is accepted. That's what we learn from Bi Yisrael. The Idach, so right about their button, they don't need it, they already know Elajoitis from Zikne. The Gemara, how Yisrael my overlay. He needed to learn the halacha that Reb Shmuel bar Yehuda taught us, and we're soon going to see that Reb Shmuel bar Yehuda was a ger. He was a ger, and his father Yehuda was a ger. Because if he's a ger, his name should be Shmuel ben Avraham. So we're soon going to see that Shmuel ben Yehuda was Megayer together with his father. And we learn from there is Bi Yisrael Dafke if it's a Yid, meaning Bebezin Shal Yisrael v'lo Bebezin Shal Ger. Shmuel bar Yehuda, who was a ger himself, darshans that a ger is possible to sit on a bezdin for chalitza, and not only is a ger possible to sit on a bezdin of chalitza, if a ger is if a Yid is the son of a ger or the son of a Giyaris, he can't be on the bezdin for chalitza either. And we're going to see a little bit more detail in what the rules are about it there. The Idich B'Yisrael Achrinuksit. It says another pasuk Yisrael to tell us both halachas. Sai Koldu, Sai if he's not a mumche, and Sai that the dying has to be a Yid. The Idich Miboyle Tanya. The other mandamar who now is an extra Yisrael will use it for something else. Omer Vida Pam Achas Hayinu Yoshvin Rafnei Reb Tarfon. We were once sitting in front of Reb Tarfon, and a chalitza, he had to do a chalitza, and we were there, so we got a live demonstration of how chalitza works. By the process, Rabbi Tarfon told us, if you're here witnessing the chalitza, anu kulchem chalitza now. Everybody should say chalitza now. Just like after a bris, we say kashem shenechas labris, kate tichonis l'torah l'masim toivim. But chalitza, everyone there should say chalitza now. And we're going to soon see why. It's because we want to proliferate and make sure everybody knows about this chalitza, and the Gemara is going to explain why that's necessary. Ve'edich mi v'nikra nafka. It says v'nikra shmoy b'Yisrael base chalitza now. That's how we know you have to say chalitza now. Zok the Gemara el me'ata. Okay, period. So the Gemara doesn't go by there. What does the other mandama do with v'nikra? I guess he holds the love out. Now the Gemara is another kash. Every time it seems to mention a double lashon like zakenim ziknei, the Gemara understands that to automatically add two more dayanim. Well, in the psukim it said v'karu and it said v'dibru, which each are referring to a plural amount of people involved in setting up the chalitza proceeding. So why don't we add another 4 dayanim? El Mayata v'kiru shnayim should add 2 more dayanim, and v'dibru shnayim. So are you telling me based on that, hachinami Reb Yehuda harei kantisha? If we add 4 people to the 5 total of Reb Yehuda, you get 9. And if you add 4 people to the 3 total of the Rabbon, you get 7. Rabbon harei kanshiva. Zokt Gemara no. V'kiru and v'dibru we don't darshan. V'karu and v'dibru we don't darshan to say that it's referring to extra dayanim. Those 2 words teach us a different, very important lesson. And we learn from there as follows. Bezdin cannot have a shliach do any of this process. They have to do it themselves personally. V'dibru elov means melamed shemasiyin again. It's like they actually consult with him. They talk to him and discuss with him and give him an eitzah as to whether or not this yibum is a good idea, or if he's better opting out with chalitza. And we had this Gemara before. Shemayahu yelad v'izkena. If he's a young man and she's an older woman, he could be a 15 or 18-year-old yavim and she might be 73. Or who's zaken? If he's 73 years old, he older and she's just a little girl, then I'm going to tell him Malach Eitzel Yolda, why you an old man, why do you want to be Meshadach with a young woman? Malach Eitzel Zakena, why you as a young man, why would you want to marry this old woman? It's not going to be a good shidduch, you're not going to see eye to eye. Kalach Eitzel Shekamaisa. Go to a person, be Meshadach with a person who's more similar to you. Don't create a household that's going to be prone to disagreement, to argument, to division, which is very interesting because here you have a pasuk where Chazal is darshaning that a dayan is supposed to consult and recommend someone not do a mitzvah shebetayra. So we try to speak about that. That's a little bit unusual. Since when is a Rav's job to try to convince you not to keep the mitzvahs of the Torah? So one of the Rishonim say this is all part of the derecheh ha'achinayim. We know derecheh ha'achinayim is a very big theme in Yibam. For instance, we know the halacha is that if a man dies with a child, so there's no chi of Yibam, but the child that they had dies after the father dies. So technically now, you might say she should go do Yibam now because there is no surviving son or surviving child for this man. But we don't say that. Why? Because the Rachel Dar Kinayim. Imagine a woman knows that she's free to marry anybody. She marries somebody, and then 10 years later, her son from the first husband dies, and now she has to get Chalitza. It would be a problem with the Rachel Dar Kinayim. You can't put a woman through something like that. So here as well, the Derecheh Dakinayim would dictate that Yibum should not be done. And that's why it says it differently. Omar Rav Omar Nachman, Halacha Chalitza B'Shloisha. The halacha is Chalitza is with 3. So clearly, Rav is paskening, Rav Nachman is paskening, like the Shita who holds 3, which is exactly what our Mishnah says. And that's exactly why he paskens that way. Why did Rav Nachman pasken that 3 dayanim is enough? Not like Rabbi Yehuda. It's because our Tana seems to only mention that Shita, so it's our Stam Mishnah. Are you telling me that anytime I find a Stam Mishnah, that's how we paskin? I'll show you another area where we have a Stam Mishnah where we didn't paskin like it. Because Yachi Miyunami, for dayanim to officiate over a Miyun ceremony, they should also say, Rabbi Nachman should also paskin that you need 3 dayanim. Ditnan, we learned a Stam Mishnah, Hamiyun v'Chalitza b'Shloisha. So just like you follow the Stam Mishnah and you say that Chalitza is b'Shloisha, you should follow the Stam Mishnah and say that Miyun is b'Shloisha. But in fact, we're going to see that that's not what we paskin. And if you're going to say, yes, that is the halacha, that Miyun needs 3 dayanim, that's not true. Because Vatani, we looked at the price. Miyun, Beisham Yoyim Bezed Mumchin, you need Bezed Mumchin, with Sil Yoyim, with Bezed Shalom Bezed. But Elu ve'elu, Sai Beisham and Sai Besil agree, Moedim. So Tzorach Shloisha, you need 3 dayanim to officiate a Miyun ceremony. However, we have a dissenting opinion. Rabbi Yosy Bar Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yosy, this pair of tzaddikim, of Talmid Chacham, machshirin b'shnayim. They allow even 2 people to officiate a meal. V'omer Rabbi Yosef Bar Minyume Omer Rav Nachman, halacha ka'oisei azuk. And Rabbi Yosef Bar Minyume Omer Rav Nachman, and it's Rav Nachman we're talking about, here Rav Nachman paskins, like the pair, meaning Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Elazar, to say you only need 2 dayanim to run a meal. But if Rav Nachman passes like the Stam Mishnah, he should have paskin like the Stam Mishnah that says you need 3 dayanim to do a miyun ceremony. Zok Gemara, there's a big difference. Hasam Chatztam. By miyun, yes, you identified a Stam Mishnah, but you only identified 1 Stam Mishnah. Hacha Trei Stam. We have 2 Stam Mishnahs. We have the Stam Mishnah that we just learned a moment ago on the first wide line, and we have our Mishnah. So we have 2 Stam Mishnahs. That's better. Zok to Gemara, that's not a good difference because Hasam Nami Trei Stam Ininu. I'll find you another Stam Mishnah that addresses the miyun that also says you need 3. That's none we learned. If someone officiates over a miyun, or if someone officiates over a chalitza, the dying involved, there's a lot of married that woman. It looks a little funny then maybe he would only matter her because he wanted to marry her. It's not a problem. Because you need 3 dayanim, and there's 2 other dayanim who were also involved in being matter this woman. So it doesn't look bad if one of the 3 dayanim end up marrying her, because it doesn't look bad on him because there's 2 other dayanim independent of him who say that this woman is mutter. But what you learn from here is Shehu Bezdin, Miyun must be done with the Bezdin of 3. So we have 2 stam mishnahs saying Miyun needs to be done with a Bezdin of 3, yet Reb Nachman Paskin that you only need a Bezdin of 2. Elahasam Trey Stami. For their halach of Miyun, we found 2 stam mishnahs. But Hachat Tlos is Stami. But we have 3 stam mishnahs that Paskin that you need 3 dayanim for a Chalitza. In fact, Gemara, what is this? Whatever kash is, whatever rise is. Michti, hastam vastam. We have a stam mishnah saying that you need 3 dayanim for a chalitza. We have a stam mishnah that says you need 3 dayanim for a meal. Mali chatstam, mali treistam, mali tlosastam. It doesn't make a difference how many stam mishnah. So if you tell me a stam mishnah is the mishnah that you follow, so what's the difference how many stam mishnahs there are? The fact is, the stam mishnah referring to both chalitza as well as to meal. And it says, in fact, that you need 3. So how come Reb Nachman didn't paskin by Mion? You need 3 as well. I will explain to you the reason. Hoyo, since ustam b'mokam achloikis. This is not stam mishnah. This is a stam mishnah that clearly illustrates our psak halacha, and I'll explain. It's not to be learned. Smicha zekenim ve'egla rufa b'shloish. Smicha of a rabbi, an egla rufa needs 3 dayanim. Divrei Rabbi Yosy, and Rabbi Yehuda argues and says b'chamisha. So clearly, this mishnah is citing the areas where Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with the psak of 3 dayanim and requires 5 dayanim. And in this very mishnah, the mishnah deals with chalitza as well. Chalitza v'amiunin b'shloisha. Now we know from our sugya that Rabbi Kiva had a dissenting opinion by chalitza and required 5. V'loy kapolad Rabbi Yehuda. And you don't see here that Rabbi Yehuda is arguing by chalitza. Now in this very brisa, or in this very mishnah where we're discussing places where Rabbi Yehuda does argue, like by Smichas Kenim and Egla Rufa, it doesn't mention anything about Rabbi Yehuda arguing by Chalitza. So what does that prove? Shemamina Hodu Rabbi Yehuda. It must be that Rabbi Yehuda was chayzer from his psak l'gabe Chalitza, and that's why in this Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda didn't comment and argue on the Tanakama Shita that you only need 3. Shemamina. So from this Mishnah, it's a very good raya what our psak halacha is, because this proves, in fact, that Rabbi Yehuda was chayzer and agrees now that by chalitza you need 3 dayanim. You don't have such a configuration by Miyun. There's no place where it discusses other things and then it discusses Miyun. Therefore, you don't have any raya as to what the psak halacha would be, and that's why Reb Nachman paskin that 2 dayanim would be enough for Miyun. That is. Okay, so more about it. This is a very, very unique halacha. I don't think you find any similar halacha to this halacha. And that is when dayanim want to do chalitza, they have to prepare in advance and identify and declare the chalitza is being done in this place. Very unusual halacha. I don't know if there's any other halacha where Bezdin has to declare the exact location of a procedure that they're doing. The Chassidut says, but also Yevimtoi Hashayra El Zakenim. Yevamos has to go up to the gate to the Zakenim. So Hashayra is the place that has already been previously designated. Rav Papa, Rav Huna Ber Yeshua of the Uvda B'Chamisha. They once made Chalitza and they actually had 5 dayanim there. Frektim Mar Kaman, who would this be consistent with? Rabbi Yehuda. It will be consistent with Rabbi Yehuda Shita, who says you need 5. Frektim Mar, didn't we just say a minute ago, Hadarbe, didn't we just prove that Rabbi Yehuda was chayzer from his assertion that you need 5 dayanim and agreed that you only need 3 dayanim? Yes. So why is it that
they wanted 5 people there. So just so that it should become public what the Chalitza happened, which in and of itself is very interesting, because we know when it comes to Lashon Hara, Apeitlasa is something that we know is considered publicized. Yet here, the Gemara is saying in order to make sure it's public, you need 2 people. So that's another unique halacha, that here, for something to be publicized, you only need to have a peanut gallery of 2 people. Now, what is the reason why we need to pass around the message, and we need to know that everybody needs to know that this woman had chalitza? So Rashi says 2 very interesting reasons. Rashi says either the chalutzi, it's important that everybody knows this woman had chalitza, and this way she will not marry a kohen. Inami, another thing is the lesu inshi v'likt b'tzula. We want her to get married. So by taking an ad in the newspaper saying Mrs. So-and-so is now available for shidduchim, and she happens to have a beautiful house, and here's a picture of her house, this way people will want to marry her. That's why we publicize the chalitza. So what would be the difference between these 2 reasons? If it's because we want to prevent a chalutza from marrying a kohen, or if we just want everyone to know that Mrs. So-and-so is available so that she can find another shidduch. So the answer is simple. What if this woman who's a chalutza, the husband that died was not her first husband? What if she was married once before and she was migureshes from that first husband? So this woman, anyway, it's known that she's a gerusha and she's pasal to a kohen. So there's no need to publicize that she's a chalutza to protect her from marrying a kohen, because it's already known that she's a gerusha, that she cannot marry a kohen. But if the reason for it is the less of inchi v'likbetzu Allah, then in fact, even a woman who's a gerusha needs publicity, in fact, that she got her chalitza, so that she should be on the shidduch mark. So let me ask you a question. If that's the case, why isn't it required when every woman gets a get? There should also be publicity, because we want people to know that this woman is available, and therefore we tell everybody that she got a get. So I heard over very nice that when a woman gets a get, she has a document that in fact proves that she can show people and share with people that she's a gerusha. That will create enough of a verification for people that she's in fact a free woman, a free agent. She's available for shidduchim. But chalitza, she doesn't get a souvenir of the chalitza. She doesn't get anything. So therefore, in the process of the chalitza, we make sure to get this announced, that she's available for marriage. Okay, let's see the Heilige Gemara weiter. So the reason why they added an extra 2 people is not because of the actual functioning of the chalitza. It's just so that it should become publicized a little bit. So we learned earlier from Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda that one of the dayanim cannot be a ger. What are these spectators, these 2 additional people, would they be able to be a ger? That's something we want to talk about, which we will discuss shortly. Rabbi Ashi ikla levei Rav Kahana. Rabbi Ashi once came and he visited Rav Kahana. Omer lei, Rav Kahana said, "Oh, Rabbi Ashi, if you're here, I need you for a minute." Omer lei, Sol kamar legabon, could you stay with us a little bit? We need you to be the 5th man. So if you're walking down Bathurst Street and you pass by maybe the Gerish Stiebel, or you pass by Rabbi Bartfeld, or you pass by, I forgot the name of the shul where the print shop is, and someone's standing outside saying, a center, you know that they want you for a minyan. But what if you're walking by and they say, a fifter, you know they want you for a chalitza. So Rabbi Kahana was standing there, a fifth, and then when Rabbi Ashi walked by, he was, here's I was screaming a fifth, and he figured like I'll walk by. You know why? Because if I walk by someone who's saying at center, I'll feel uncomfortable not going in. They need me for minyan, so I'll maybe walk across the street. I'll make believe that I'm here. But he only heard a fifth, so he figured he's safe. What could they want already? And then he dechapped him in also for a chalitza. Rav Kahana said, "Hava ke'imno kamed Rabbi Yehuda." I was once standing in front of Rabbi Yehuda, and he told me, Suck Lezirza the Kani, go up to that place where I made a pile of bundles of stocks, because I need you to be one of the five. So here you see two alarms. He didn't just say, come, I need you to be one of five. I need you to go to the place that I designated to be the place of the Chalitza. So you also see the halacha that we learned earlier of Lemikva Duchta. Go to that place. I need you as one of the five. Amr Loi Lama, Lama Lich Chamisha. I asked him, why would I need five? Why do you need five people for? I thought you only need three. Amalu, he told me, Kehechid Lafar Shamilsa. So you see, this concept of Pir Shamilsa was very accepted. And now we have the fascinating story with Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda is the same person who earlier told us that a ger is possible to be on the bezin. And I mentioned earlier that Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda was a ger himself. If he was a ger himself, why was his name not Shmuel ben Avram? Because Rashi tells us that him and his father were Megayer at the same time. So he took on the name Shmuel, and his father took on the name Yehuda. So Havakoi Kamei de Rabbi Yehuda. They were standing by Rabbi Yehuda, not the same Rabbi Yehuda as Shmuel by Yehuda's father. Amr Lei, so Rabbi Yehuda told them, oh, if you're here, great. I need a fifth. Tal Zirza, the Kani, go to that place that's designated for a Chalitza that I'm going to be officiating on today. L'staruva bechamisha, to be one of the five, Lipersume Milsa, to do the piercing. Amr Lei, so Rabbi Shmuel by Yehuda told Rabbi Yehuda, Tanina, we learned, be Yisrael, which teaches us Bebezin Yisrael. For Loi Bebezin Shalgerim. You cannot have a Bebezin Shalgerim. But I'm not Gerna. I'm a Ger. So you see from this story, the way we're learning it right now, is that not only is a Ger possible to be one of the Bezdin, he's also possible to be one of the five, which is a very big Chiddush. However, the Ritva has a different Girsa in our Mishnah. And the Ritva says that the way the Gemara reads is that Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda said, I can't be part of the Bezdin because I'm a ger. And to that, Rabbi Yehuda answered, I don't need you to be part of the Bezdin. I only need you to be one of the two who's there for Suma Milsa. And for that, a ger is good. So based on the Ritva, if we compare the Ritva's understanding to the understanding of Rashi, based on the Ritva, a ger will be kosher to be the number 4 and number 5. The Pearson Milsa component. But according to Rashi, it doesn't seem like a ger will be good for any part. The Ritva also makes clear that the reason why the ger is good is because it was specified and identified, you're here, La Pearson. What if there's just 5 dayanim and it's not specified what each one's purpose is clearly, then in fact a ger couldn't be one of those 5. But if it's very clear that you 3 are the dayanim and you 2 are there for Pearson, then those 2 would be able to be even ger. Zog to Gemara weiter. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said, as an aside, I want you to know in what high esteem, in what high regard I have of Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda the ger. And he said, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda, Mafikta mamuna apumei. If Reuben said, Shimon, you owe me $100, and he had no other raya other than the fact that Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda was testifying that Shimon owes Reuben money, we would make Shimon pay based on the testimony of an Eid Echad of Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda. In fact, tomorrow, is that what you actually mean? Impossible. Well, the Torah said you need 2 Edom. I don't care who you are, even if you're Shmuel Bar Yehuda, but you cannot be Mochi Mechaverei without a raya of 2 Edom. Ella, that's not what Rabbi Yehuda meant. What he meant is Marana Stora Apumei. If someone came with a star, Reuben came with a star that said that Shimon owes the money, and Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yehuda said, this star, I think it can be paid off. There's something wrong, there's something fishy about the star. We would not allow Reuben to collect from Shimon based on this star. Oh my Rava said, even though a ger cannot officiate on the Chalitza, that's only for Chalitza. However, turning over the daf. However, ger don es chavei dvar Torah. A ger might not be able to officiate on the proceedings of a Yid, of a Yisrael, but of another Ger, he is able to process those proceedings. So let's have a halach over here. Let's get into detail over here. Rashi says, "What has been ger donas chaverit v'artayra?" Even dining of fashos. So even though a ger cannot be a dayan on the question of dining of fashos for a Yisrael, mal yoso, but for a ger just like him, he can even do dining of fashos. The ilu dinim mominus, because if we're only talking about dinim mominus like a chosh and mishpat in Torah, afilu lechol Yisrael nami. A ger is believed, a ger could be a dayan for chosh and mishpat. So Rashi now has a very big tradition halacha that we say a ger could not paskin for a regular Yisrael. That's for Chalitza, that's for dinim nefashis, but for dinim mominus, a ger can be a kosher dayan. However, for dinim nefashis, a ger, even though a ger cannot be a dayan for a regular Yisrael, he could be a dayan for a ger like him. Tosfos disagrees. There's just a small one-liner or two-liner Tosfos. Second Tosfos Lamed says Tosfos learns, in fact, that a ger cannot paskin even mominus, and he could only paskin for a dinei mominus on another ger. What are the reasons for this? Zok to Gemara, because when it comes to appointing a melech, when it comes to putting a person into a place of authority who could dictate judgment upon another by himself without the consensus of anybody else, it says as follows. Shenemar, it says, Soim tosim alecha melech. What type of king should you have? Asher yivchar Hashem alekecha boy. That Hashem chose mikerav achecha, from amongst your brothers, tosim alecha melech. Who should you appoint as a king to rule over you? Someone who's mikerav achecha. But we learn from there, alecha. When do we need to make sure it's a yid? That's only if it's paskening on you who's a yid. Alecha hu de ve'inan mikerav achecha. Aval ger, but a ger donas kaver ger, because that's also considered mikerav achecha for a ger. So Rashi tells us that a melech is like a dayan, because it says that the melech is in charge of the mishpat of the land. It says melech b'mishpat yamidoret. So we see that the melech has to do with the Sanhedrin, and therefore we learn that someone who's paskening upon you should be a Yisrael. We're soon going to see that even if it's Imam Yisrael, it could be a problem. By Jews, the nationality goes according to the mother. But here, we're talking about something that's different. We're talking about giving somebody unchecked power as a dictator to make decisions for you. When we offer somebody such power, we have to make sure that it's someone who shares our background completely. And therefore, we would not allow someone who's even the son of a ger to be able to be a dayan. Zok to Gemara, so according to Rashi, if you had a ger whose mother was Jewish, it's only that his father was a ger, then he could even pass dinei nefashos for another yid. However, Chalitza is even more stringent than dinei nefashos, and we require actually of a ve'imam Yisrael. We only allow him to be on the best of Chalitza if both his mother and his father were Jewish. Shenemar v'nikra shmoi b'Yisrael. So it's so interesting because the same b'Yisrael that we used on Amud Beis to tell us that even an ish koldahu, even someone who's not a Talmud Chacham, even someone who's a head could be a dayan, from that same Yisrael will be clear that as far as his Judaism is concerned, both his parents have to have been Jewish. Now, I just want to go back a second to the namonis that Rabbi Yehuda gave to Shmuel Bar Yehuda that I would believe him to mess up a star. Tosfos learns very, very interesting. It means if someone brings a star and Shmuel Bar Yehuda said that this is not a good star, what do you do with the star? It doesn't say that the star is useless. what it says is that the Toiveya, who has this star, has to make a shvuah that he was never paid back yet, and that it's a good star, and then we will actually give him his money. So we know anytime there's a shvuah d'oraisa in the Torah, it's always someone swearing to avoid payment. And the classic example is Moed b'mikzas. If Reuben tells Shimon, you owe me $100, and Shimon says, no, I only owe you $50. So Shimon has to swear to Reuben that I only owe you $50, and therefore he saves $50. So the person is swearing to avoid from paying. But by the Rabbanan Shvuos, you could swear, and the shvuah will give you the namanis to take away money from somebody else. So in this case, where he had a star, Reuben had a star where he would be able to collect from Shimon, and Shmuel Bar Yehuda put a kink in the star. He dented the star. He said the star is not Neman. We don't say Amochi Mechaber Maraya. There, if Reuben swears that the star is good, then he's nishpa v'noitel, then he can collect with this star. Okay, let's see the Gemara Vayta. Amar Rabba, Amar Rav Kahana. Amar Rav. Rabba said in the name of Kahana, in the name of Rav. Im Yovei Eliyahu. Now, the minig was that you use a sandal to make chalitza. And for generations, people make chalitza with a sandal, not with a minnow. And remember, we said that a sandal is something with a hard sole that has only straps. It doesn't cover the top of the foot. There's just straps that wrap around the leg to hold that sole in place. That's what the minig was that they used for chalitza. But a minnow, the minig was not used for chalitza. Well, they didn't have a minig not to use it. They didn't have a minig about it. So Omer Rabba, Omer Avkan, Rav, if Eliyahu would come and say, even though there's no minig about it, I'm declaring you could do chalitza with the minnow shaymin like. The Gemara is going to be medayik that since that's what he said, then it would be mashma that right now, since that's not the minig, we will not allow you to use a minnow for chalitza. But if Eliyahu came and said, yes, you may, well then, in fact, we would allow it. But if Eliyahu came and tried to interrupt an established minig, and our minig that's established is that we use a sandal for chalitza, and if Eliyahu came along and said, "Ein chalitza b'sandal," then "Ein shaymin," you wouldn't listen to him. Shekvar nohagu ha'am b'sandal. It's already agafir for doiris that sandal is what's used for chalitza. Even if Eliyahu Hanavi comes, he wouldn't disrupt it. Yosef Amarav Kan Amarav. If he told us that you should not use a minnow for chalitza, we would listen to him because we don't have a minig about it. But if he said, then we wouldn't listen to him because again, he cannot disrupt an established minig. Now, what's the difference between these two expressions of what Rav said? The Gemara, it's not is minnow lechatchila. In other words, if Eliyahu doesn't come and there's no established minig regarding minnow, can you use a minnow? According to the first shot, according to the first nusach, where Eliyahu said, if he said chalta min shaymin loy, means the default is we wouldn't use a minnow. If Eliyahu told us we could use a minnow, then we would. But according to the second shita, the quote was, if Eliyahu would come and tell us not to use a minnow, we would listen to him, which is mashma that now, without any established minig, in fact, we would accept a minnow for chalitza. But the question comes up, and that is, isn't there the concept of Torah lo b'shamaymi? Eliyahu Hanavi is going to come and tell us things? Torah lo b'shamaymi. So the answer to that is, some Sefer says, Eliyahu Hanavi has two forms with which he takes shape in. Sometimes he comes here, not with the actual goof, and whenever he comes that way, anything he says has a status of Torah b'shamaymi, and he himself doesn't have to conform to halacha. But on the other hand, when Eliyahu shows up in his flesh and blood, which we have many cases of Gilu Eliyahu, then he has to play by the rules of the land, and therefore he has to keep all mitzvahs in that form, and he is nema in that form because it's not considered Torah b'shamaymi. So this means if Eliyahu would come in person, not as a novi, but he would come as a human, then we would listen to him. But of course, we would not listen to him Keneged Minik because he's 1/8. He still doesn't have a status of more than 1/8. If it's established for Minik to use a sandal, even Eliyahu couldn't come and change things because Torah Leiber Shemaim. But if there's no established Minik, then we could listen to Eliyahu Hanavi. So the Satmar Rebbe says, you see from here, the strength of a Minik, that you can't be Mevatla Minik so fast. Even if Eliyahu Hanavi comes, you don't listen to him to be Mevatla Minik. That's only if the Minik is not directly opposed to halacha. But if there's a direct contradiction between halacha and minig, then of course you have to enforce halacha. Okay, we'll stop here. Now on Shabbos at 7:20, Moshe Stern and Shlomi Feinberg were kind enough to ask Rabbi Von Weisbrod if he would say shir. So he's going to be saying shir starting from the beginning of the sugya, I believe from Omer Rabbah right over here, like six lines to the top. So Rabbi Von is going to say shir from there. And I'm going to Mitzvah say shir Motzoi Shabbos at 10:30 for those who don't want to or cannot make it to Rabbi Vrom's shir. I'm very grateful and thankful to Rabbi Vrom for saying shir on Shabbos. For a change, you'll have a good shir that's actually accurate. So I'm happy for everybody. I also want to add that if someone could be so kind, Motzoi Shabbos, and WhatsApp me as to where Rabbi Vrom got up to, I'll know where to stop when I say shir Motzoi Shabbos.
Yosy, that was another thing I wanted to ask you. Is there a place where you want him to stop, or if he catches us up, you're okay with that